You've heard the phrase pain is gain, but what if that's not just a workout mantra? What if it's a brutal truth about life itself? Friedrich Nietzsche believed that suffering isn't a curse, it's the very condition for greatness. That every wound, every hardship, is not there to break you, but to build you. This isn't motivation, it's philosophy. And it might just change how you see your pain forever. Friedrich Nietzsche's famous maxim, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger," has become a widely quoted phrase in modern culture. It's used everywhere, from self-help books to gym walls, but few truly understand the philosophical weight and existential depth behind it. For Nietzsche, this was not a casual motivational phrase, it was a core insight into the nature of human transformation through suffering. Nietzsche observed that life, by its very structure, is full of hardship. Suffering is inevitable, be it through loss, failure, illness, rejection, or inner conflict. Yet unlike many thinkers of his time, Nietzsche did not propose escaping suffering, nor did he suggest masking it with religious promises of comfort or moral idealism. Instead, he posed a radical challenge: embrace your suffering, because it is the very thing that shapes your inner strength. To Nietzsche, strength was not measured by comfort, happiness, or peace. It was measured by one's ability to endure, confront, and grow through adversity. He saw pain as the anvil upon which character is forged, and believed that it is only by walking through the fire of life's trials that a person becomes who they truly are. This idea is rooted in his broader philosophy of becoming, the idea that human beings are not fixed, but constantly evolving through internal conflict and external pressure. Nietzsche rejected complacency, he despised passivity. Instead, he admired those who wrestled with their limitations and overcame themselves. For him, every scar, physical, emotional, or spiritual, was a testament to one's will to power, the drive not merely to survive, but to rise, to assert, and to transform. It's crucial to understand that Nietzsche didn't glorify pain in itself. He was not promoting martyrdom or blind endurance. Rather, he emphasized the potential hidden within suffering. When confronted consciously, pain becomes a teacher. It reveals our weaknesses, tests our convictions, and forces us to abandon illusions. In doing so, it pushes us toward authenticity, toward living a life that is truly our own. There is also a deep psychological insight embedded here. Pain demands that we choose either to collapse under its weight or to rise with new strength. Nietzsche was intensely interested in those individuals who refused to be defeated by life's cruelty, those who instead used their hardship as a form of self-overcoming. This is why he revered historical figures, artists, and philosophers who transformed personal suffering into creative or intellectual breakthroughs. In today's world, Nietzsche's message remains profoundly relevant. We often seek comfort, avoidance, and quick relief. We escape pain through distractions, numb ourselves with entertainment, and chase happiness as an end in itself. But Nietzsche invites us to ask a deeper question: what if pain is not the enemy? What if pain is the very condition for your growth? Ultimately, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger is not about blind optimism. It's about radical resilience. It's a declaration of defiance against defeat. It's a philosophical stance that suffering, when faced with courage and clarity, is not just survivable, it's transformative. This is not easy advice, but for Nietzsche, easy truths are rarely true. The truth is often hard, uncomfortable, and painful. But it is within that pain that you may find your strength, not just to endure life, but to elevate it. At the heart of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy lies one of his most misunderstood yet powerful ideas, the concept of the Übermensch, often translated as the Overman or Superman. This figure represents Nietzsche's vision of the highest form of human development. A person who creates their own values, rises above conventional morality, and embraces the full spectrum of life, including its pain. But crucially, Nietzsche believed that the path to becoming the Übermensch is paved with suffering. The Übermensch does not emerge through comfort or safety. Rather, this ideal human being is forged through struggle, crisis, and internal conflict. Suffering for Nietzsche is not incidental to human greatness. It is essential. Only by facing and overcoming suffering can one break free from the herd mentality and become the master of one's own destiny. To understand this, we must first recognize Nietzsche's rejection of traditional morality and religious consolation. In works like Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche challenges the idea that life must conform to fixed notions of good and evil. He criticizes the morality of the masses, what he calls slave morality, which, in his view, promotes weakness, obedience, and dependency. This morality teaches people to fear suffering, to avoid risk, and to cling to external systems of meaning. In contrast, Nietzsche calls for a evaluation of all values, led by those who have the courage to question inherited beliefs and create meaning for themselves. The Übermensch is that individual, the one who rises above traditional morality and lives authentically, guided by a self-made inner compass. But such autonomy cannot be granted, it must be earned. And it is earned, Nietzsche insists, through intense personal suffering. Suffering acts as a test, a crucible, a challenge that strips away illusions and forces the individual to confront their naked existence. It breaks down the false securities of comfort, social approval, and dogma. And in doing so, it presents a choice: either one succumbs to bitterness, despair, and victimhood, or one transforms. This transformation is central to Nietzsche's vision. The future Übermensch must not run from suffering, but instead use it as raw material for self-overcoming. In this sense, suffering becomes a creative force. It compels reflection, awakens courage, and instills resilience. The pain that shatters many becomes, for the Übermensch, a source of inner power. Nietzsche wrote, "Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Übermensch, a rope over an abyss." This metaphor is striking. It implies that human beings are not complete, they are transitional. To reach their full potential, they must walk a dangerous path, constantly at risk of falling, but also capable of reaching heights previously unimaginable. The abyss below represents chaos, suffering, and the fear of meaninglessness. But the Übermensch walks the rope with awareness, accepting the danger and using it as a path to transcendence. It is also important to note that Nietzsche did not equate the Übermensch with perfection. This figure is not flawless nor free from pain. Instead, the Übermensch is resilient, self-aware, and committed to growth, no matter the cost. They are shaped by adversity, not protected from it. Moreover, the concept of the Übermensch is not merely individualistic in a selfish sense. It has broader existential implications. Nietzsche saw the modern world moving toward nihilism, a state where traditional values collapse and people lose faith in objective meaning. In this spiritual crisis, he believed the only way forward was through the birth of new values, crafted by individuals strong enough to face the void and create purpose from within. The Übermensch is that individual, and their strength lies not in avoiding suffering but in conquering it. In our modern context, this philosophy remains deeply relevant. Many people today seek quick answers, emotional ease, and external validation. Yet Nietzsche's vision reminds us that true selfhood, genuine power, and lasting impact are born from introspection, hardship, and a refusal to conform. If we wish to rise above mediocrity, to live with depth, integrity, and originality, we must be willing to face our own abyss. In short, Nietzsche teaches us that suffering is not the enemy. It is the fire that burns away weakness, the mountain that demands we climb, and the mirror that reflects who we truly are. The journey to becoming the Übermensch is not an escape from pain. It is a bold, creative embrace of it. In his exploration of human suffering, Friedrich Nietzsche offers not only insight into the value of pain, but also a sharp critique of how people respond to it. He identifies two radically different paths, resentment and empowerment. According to Nietzsche, the way we respond to pain is far more important than the pain itself. One response leads to bitterness, blame, and stagnation. The other leads to power, self-overcoming, and personal transformation. Nietzsche introduces the idea of ressentiment, a French word he uses deliberately in On the Genealogy of Morality. Ressentiment is more than just resentment in the emotional sense. It is a deep, reactive moral attitude that arises when an individual or group, unable to express strength directly, redirects their suffering outward, blaming others or external systems for their pain. Rather than confronting hardship head-on, the person of ressentiment invents moral justifications for their weakness. They label the strong as evil, the successful as corrupt, and the powerful as oppressive, not because this is necessarily true, but because it allows them to feel morally superior in their powerlessness. This form of resentment becomes toxic. It festers and grows in the shadows of the psyche. Those caught in ressentiment do not seek to rise above their pain. Instead, they demand that others be brought down to their level. They cling to victimhood as identity and turn their suffering into a weapon of moral condemnation. Nietzsche saw this clearly in religious and political ideologies that glorify meekness and obedience while vilifying strength, ambition, and individual excellence. By contrast, Nietzsche admired those who responded to suffering not by blaming others, but by using pain as fuel for self-overcoming. He believed that truly noble individuals confront suffering directly, accept it as part of life, and then transform it into something meaningful. These individuals refuse to be defined by their wounds. Instead, they use their experiences, however painful, as a foundation for inner strength and clarity. This choice, resentment or empowerment, is central to Nietzsche's ethical philosophy. It is not just about psychological attitudes, it is a moral decision. Do we wallow in the unfairness of life and seek comfort in blaming others? Or do we take full responsibility for our existence, including its pain, and use it as a source of growth? Nietzsche's empowered individual says, "This happened to me, and I will grow because of it." The resentful person says, "This happened to me, and it is someone else's fault." One path leads upward, the other downward. The person of empowerment does not deny pain. Nietzsche was never naive about suffering, but he emphasized that meaning can be created from suffering, not through denial or distraction, but through direct confrontation. In this way, pain becomes transformative. It sharpens the mind, deepens the soul, and teaches endurance. But it does so only for those who face it honestly. This is part of Nietzsche's broader critique of what he called slave morality, a morality born out of weakness and resentment. Slave morality values meekness, humility, and obedience not because these are inherently virtuous, but because they offer protection for the weak in a world of harsh realities. Nietzsche contrasts this with master morality, which arises from strength, confidence, and self-affirmation. Master morality embraces life, including its suffering, and seeks to create values from a position of power, not fear. In modern terms, Nietzsche's insight can be seen in how people respond to adversity. Some dwell in perpetual grievance, building their identity around victimhood. Others endure quiet pain and turn inward, reflecting, learning, and ultimately emerging wiser and more grounded. Nietzsche would ask, which one are you? The truth is that we all suffer. No one escapes pain, but suffering alone does not ennoble us. What matters is how we respond. Nietzsche's philosophy is not meant to diminish pain, but to awaken responsibility, to challenge us to rise above bitterness and to reject the temptation to blame life, fate, or others. In this way, Nietzsche speaks to our deepest potential. He reminds us that we have the power to turn pain into wisdom, weakness into strength, and wounds into wisdom, but only if we choose empowerment over resentment. This is not the easy path. But in Nietzsche's view, the easy path is the path of decay. The hard path, the path of self-overcoming, is the path of greatness. Among Friedrich Nietzsche's many profound contributions to modern philosophy, few are as powerful, elegant, and life-altering as the concept of Amor Fati, which literally means love of fate. It is not merely acceptance of the inevitable, nor passive resignation in the face of suffering. Amor Fati is something much more radical. It is the active, joyful embrace of everything that happens, including pain, failure, and tragedy, as essential parts of one's existence. Nietzsche describes Amor Fati as the ideal attitude of the strong spirit, the one who does not merely endure the storms of life, but welcomes them as necessary. He writes, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it." This idea demands a radical shift in perspective. Most people experience suffering with resistance. They ask, "Why me? Why now?" and long to escape or undo their past. Nietzsche challenges this instinct. He invites us to stop resisting reality and instead see all things, even our most painful experiences, as part of a greater personal necessity, as the raw material through which we are shaped. To practice Amor Fati is to look back at every event, every heartbreak, every failure, every illness, every loss, and say, "I would live it all again, exactly as it was." This is not easy, but for Nietzsche, truth and greatness were never easy. They were earned through courage, clarity, and confrontation with reality. In this sense, Amor Fati is not fatalism. It does not call us to be passive or indifferent. On the contrary, it is a call to active engagement with life. Nietzsche does not advocate sitting still while life happens. Rather, he urges us to dive into life with open arms, to say yes to everything, and to use even suffering as a means of transformation. This philosophy is deeply linked to Nietzsche's idea of the eternal recurrence, the hypothetical idea that every moment in your life will be repeated endlessly, forever. Nietzsche asks, if you had to live your exact life over and over again, eternally, would you rejoice or despair? Amor Fati is the mindset that would allow you to respond with joy. If you can live in such a way that you would be willing to repeat it forever, then you are truly living well. The implications are profound. Imagine not wishing your suffering away, not regretting your mistakes, not erasing your scars, but instead embracing them as integral to who you are. That failed relationship, that moment of humiliation, that lost opportunity, they did not ruin you, they shaped you. Amor Fati is the art of saying thank you to life, even when it hurts. Nietzsche contrasts this with the psychology of resentment. Many people live trapped in the past, resenting what happened, wishing things had been different. But this mindset is self-destructive. It keeps us tied to bitterness, unable to grow. Amor Fati liberates us from this trap. It replaces, "Why did this happen to me?" with, "How is this part of who I'm becoming?" To embrace Amor Fati is to become an artist of your own life. It is to take every stroke of fate, every dark color, every broken line, and create meaning out of it. Not in the sense of denying reality, but in the sense of owning it fully and transforming it into strength, wisdom, and authenticity. There is a quiet strength in those who live with Amor Fati. They do not need to control everything. They do not demand that life bend to their will. Instead, they bend with life, and in doing so, become unbreakable. Their serenity does not come from comfort, but from alignment with reality. Their joy is not shallow happiness, but deep affirmation. This too is mine and I welcome it. In a modern world that encourages constant comparison, discontent, and escape from pain, Nietzsche's Amor Fati is a revolutionary stance. It challenges us to befriend our past, to stand firm in the present, and to say yes to the future, not because it will be easy, but because it will be ours. To love your fate is not to deny life's cruelty. It is to absorb it, integrate it, and use it as the very soil from which your greatness grows. Friedrich Nietzsche is often remembered for his bold declaration, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." But to reduce his philosophy to the notion of physical or emotional toughness alone is to miss a deeper, more nuanced insight. Nietzsche did not merely see suffering as a way to toughen the skin or train the will. He saw it as the very condition for cultivating depth of character, intellectual clarity, and spiritual maturity. To Nietzsche, the value of suffering lies not only in the endurance it demands, but in the internal transformation it enables. Pain forces us inward. It disrupts our routines, challenges our assumptions, and strips away the surface comforts we cling to. In that process of disorientation, we are invited, often unwillingly, to reflect, reorient, and redefine ourselves. This is how suffering becomes a doorway to depth. Nietzsche believed that great human beings, the kind who shape history, create art, and redefine values, are not those who lived painless lives. Rather, they are those who have descended into the depths of suffering and emerged with insight. He writes in Beyond Good and Evil that those who have the most profound knowledge of human life have come from deep suffering. This is not a romantic glorification of pain. It is an honest assessment of what it means to grow beyond superficial existence. Modern life often encourages us to avoid discomfort at all costs. We are taught to chase happiness, convenience, and validation. Yet Nietzsche saw this pursuit of comfort as spiritually dangerous. A life free from challenge may be easier, but it is often shallow. Without disruption, without moments that break us open, we remain unaware of our inner resources, our fears, and our latent potential. Suffering, when embraced honestly, forces us to confront our inner life in ways nothing else can. This confrontation is where depth begins. Nietzsche invites us to use suffering not as an excuse to retreat into victimhood, but as an opportunity to investigate ourselves more deeply. What do we truly value? What illusions have we outgrown? What part of us must die for something greater to be born? Nietzsche's own life was a testament to this process. He endured chronic illness, isolation, rejection, and breakdown. Yet it was precisely through these hardships that his most profound works were born. His insights were not academic abstractions. They were earned through lived experience, through grappling with despair and emerging with renewed vision. In that sense, Nietzsche's philosophy was forged in fire. He also understood the relationship between suffering and creativity. The greatest art, he believed, does not come from safety and stability. It comes from confronting the tragic, the absurd, and the painful. In The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche explores how Greek tragedy arose not from optimism, but from a deep engagement with the darker aspects of life. True creativity, he argues, emerges when the artist is able to transform suffering into beauty, chaos into form. This is why Nietzsche valued authenticity so highly. The deep person, the one who has suffered and reflected, is not easily deceived by shallow pleasures or popular opinion. They are grounded. They speak with weight. Their words carry meaning not because they are perfect, but because they have been through something. Their depth allows them to connect with others, not in pity, but in shared humanity. Nietzsche did not believe that all suffering leads to growth. Unconscious suffering, pain that is denied, repressed, or blamed on others, can lead to resentment and stagnation. But suffering that is consciously engaged becomes a catalyst. It becomes, as he describes it, a hammer that does not just destroy but shapes. This is not a call to seek out pain, but to recognize its inevitability and its potential. When suffering comes, and it will, we are presented with a choice. We can run from it, distract ourselves, or lash out. Or we can meet it with courage, reflect on what it reveals, and allow it to deepen our understanding of life, of ourselves, and of others. In the end, Nietzsche's philosophy is a call to depth in a world of surfaces. It is a challenge to become more than we are, to allow even our suffering to have purpose. Because the most meaningful lives, he reminds us, are rarely the easiest. They are the lives shaped not in comfort, but in struggle. And it is through that struggle that we gain not only strength, but wisdom, clarity, and depth. So, what does Nietzsche ultimately teach us about pain? He teaches us that suffering is not just something to survive, it is something to be transformed. In his philosophy, pain is not the end, it is the beginning of becoming. It is the test of our strength, the trigger for our transformation, and the path to our deepest truths. From the raw force of, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger," to the heroic ideal of the Übermensch, who rises above suffering, to the rejection of resentment and the radical choice of self-empowerment, Nietzsche calls on us to live courageously. He invites us to say yes to life, not selectively, but entirely, to embrace even the most difficult parts of our story. Through Amor Fati, we learn to not only accept our fate, but to love it, to welcome every hardship as necessary for becoming who we are meant to be. And in the process, we do not just gain strength, we gain depth, a depth of soul, a depth of vision, and a depth of character that only those who have suffered consciously can possess. Nietzsche doesn't promise comfort. He promises something far greater, the possibility of becoming something more, something authentic, powerful, and deeply human. In a world that urges us to avoid pain, Nietzsche reminds us that sometimes the most painful paths are the ones that lead us home, to ourselves. So, the next time you're in pain, remember, this isn't just happening to you, it may be happening for you. Not because pain is good, but because what you do with it can be extraordinary.